Welcome to NavTalk Series 3. I'm Simon Prowse, your host. NavTalk is a podcast where we discuss a broad range of topics which will be inspirational and at times fun. NavTalk, brought to you by the NavWealth Financial Group, helping you reach your destination in life on purpose. Welcome everyone, and welcome to another edition of NavTalk. Today I have the great pleasure in interviewing Dannys Cahalan. Hi Danny.
G'day, Prowsey.
How are you, mate? You well?
Thanks, very well.
Now, Danny works in the travel industry and is proprietor of a company called Solve Travel Management. Danny, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to Solve, or effectively your travel industry experience over the years?
Simon, I went to art school thanks to Mr. Whitlam. University was free in those days, so a mate of mine and I said, we're great artists, we'll go to art school. But during those 3 years, I realised I wasn't very good at it. We had a great time. I didn't have to pay for my university degree. After that, I went backpacking through South America by myself, which was amazing. And returning home after a year, realised that I was not going to be an artist. My brother saw in the Sydney Morning Herald an ad, because that's where ads were there in those days, before Seek. And this is in the late 80s, a job for Flight Centre. Most people my age, or actually a lot of people in the travel industry, started their travel journey with Flight Centre. They were taking people who had no experience. There was a boom in travel agencies, and they were quite good at taking people on, training them and throwing them in the deep end. And you just learnt everything you could about travel.
Right. And Flight Centre, how long did you end up working there?
Around 5 years. So I became a manager very quickly because I guess if you showed any intuition at all, they'd keep you and give you a leg up. Ended up managing a store of 8 or 10 people when I was in my early 20s. They were a bit of a cult, big into partying, big into sales figures. I always tell people they're more of a sales company than a travel company. But what they did do is they taught me how to run a business with the basics of bring in more than what goes out. It's not rocket science.
Did Flight Centre have an ownership in that business you were running, or was that yours at the time?
They did. As the manager, you'd get 10% of the profits of that store, and then they would allow you to do a BOS, which is a buy something or other into the business.
Okay, so you could sort of slow buy.
Yes. Okay. It was like a debenture.
Mm.
And while you stayed there as manager, you'd get an extra 10 or 20%, whatever you bought in for.
And would you forego that money to buy equity if you wanted to?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then from Flight Centre, how did you end up getting into the corporate world and working with the corporates?
I had a interesting sidetrack there. So after Flight Centre, you had a relationship breakup after 5 years with my girlfriend. I'm always good at escaping, so I just ran overseas. Again, my brother, the same brother, picked up, there was a job going in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, and that was the first United Nations peacekeeping mission. Again, this was 1993, and the Khmer Rouge was still running around, and our task was to work as contractors for the United Nations to bring in about 120,000 troops and civilian police and United Nations staff into Phnom Penh from all different parts of the world, from Bulgaria, from Brazil, from Indonesia, from Bangladesh, from London. So we had an interesting time of bringing people in and taking them out again with 100 kilos of luggage. You learn the rules and you learn how to break them. And in those days, there was no internet, really. Everything was done by fax. And what we were doing was we were going to the major airlines like Swiss Air, KLM, Varig, Brazilian, Qantas, and negotiating with them to put 100 troops onto a plane with their 100 kilos of excess baggage and getting them back to where they'd come from, and then bringing the new ones over. As part of that, I learnt to charter aircraft, which is a fascinating part of business. So sometimes it's cheaper just to charter an aircraft with 100 seats on than go commercial. So it was just weighing up what those things were. Other parts that were taking dead bodies out of the country. And you think that, there's a war going on in Cambodia. Most of the troops didn't die by fire. Most of them had malaria or were killed on the roads. So I realised pretty quickly there was good money in dead bodies. They don't ask for an upgrade. No vegetarian meal requested. And you start to learn how to do freight. And part of that is dead bodies, So it was a real Wild West situation. After there, I ended up going to Somalia with the United Nations, Mogadishu in Mozambique. I was held for ransom in Bangladesh for 2 days. Ended up in the Crimea, which at that time was part of Ukraine. With recent developments, seems to be part of Russia. I didn't have a passport because I didn't know I was going to be going there. India, Pakistan, very, very interesting times. And I was flying around on a Russian Ilyushin 76, which is one of those big aircraft carriers with the wings on top of the aircraft. And I was called the cargo manager, and they'd give me $100,000 US to pay for fuel. We'd refuel in the Maldives, and we'd have a swim at the end of the airport and fly to Africa. I think I did that 7 or 8 times with a Ukrainian crew. And the company called Skylink was chartering the aircraft off the Ukrainians for about $400 US an hour and selling it to the United Nations for about $4,000 US an hour. So they were making a lot of money. There was a lot of contractors around that time, a lot of cowboys, and some things came unstuck. And I know when I left working for the UN, I got into some trouble over that sort of stuff.
Price gouging, essentially.
Yeah. So after 18 months based in Cambodia and flying around the world, they tasked me to go to the border of Iraq and Kuwait and handle the helicopters. There were 17 helicopters tasked the United Nations. But I'd seen quite a few of my friends who'd been around too long, and that sort of life is great for a period of time, but if you do it too long, you can really get stuck. Unfortunately, some of my friends got stuck in there, and even to this day, they're not great. So I decided to come back to Australia.
Okay, so your journey was starting to take you towards war, and it sounds like more as a logistic exercise rather than travel.
And that's an interesting point, Simon. People think of there's been a term of travel agent, which to me conjures up 1970s, 80s, 90s, even up to today, where a person who's a travel agent does what they're told. The client comes to them and says, this is what I want to do. There's no creativity about it at all. And you're just basically a clerk doing what you're supposed to do. So the United Nations actually puts travel under movement control, MoveCon. And I think that's what I've always been more interested in, is the logistics of travel, the controlling of movement of mostly people around the world. But that could also be luggage. It could be freight. It could be anything. So I try and stay away from that travel agent. A lot of travel agents these days are calling themselves, the groovy ones, the young ones are calling themselves travel designers. I think that's a bit of a wank. But certainly travel advisors, because travel is much more complicated these days. I think a travel advisor sounds probably better than a travel agent. And that's one of the reasons why I call our company Solve Travel Management, because we actually manage travel rather than just do what we're told.
Right. So you're not order takers, and you're creating experiences.
Correct. That's what we try and do. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. We're not order takers. We're given parameters, but we try and be creative within those parameters, be it price, be it logistics, be it ideas. And I think, I do know the clients to appreciate that.
Yeah. Now, we've been over with the UN.
Yep.
And we start to think, oh my golly gosh, I'm in war zones here, and it's getting too much. Yep. I'm getting a bit older, and
physically and mentally you need to come back. So you come back to Australia. I wanted the adrenaline of something like that experience overseas. A friend of mine then noticed a job at Channel 9, handling all their travel. I applied for the job and within days got that job. probably because of the experience I had overseas. And in those days, Channel 9 really dominated the media sector of Australia. It was the biggest TV station by far. It was a hotbed of politics and some interesting characters there. Based at Channel 9 for about 12 months and then became the manager there. And we were tasked with, in those days, 60 Minutes was the biggest thing in town. And to manage their travel was amazing. I mean, they were going to, Iran, they were going to Bangladesh, they were going to Greenland, they were going to Africa, Madagascar. And it was an open book. It just, whatever it took, you could get them there. So you had to be creative. You had to be smart about your geography. Again, computers are only just coming in. This is 1995. So, 2000 was sort of when, in my career anyway, computers really started to take off. So there was a lot of still faxing, looking after VIPs and embedding yourself. So we were working out of Channel 9, so we definitely felt like a part of the team. It was quite a rewarding experience.
So you were employed by Channel 9?
No, again, we were contracted to Channel 9 by a travel company.
Okay. Yeah. So it was a company itself that was just sitting as part of the Channel 9
That's right.
group.
Yep.
And it sounds like that you being exclusive to Channel 9, it would be days where it's quiet, or is it really, it was quite busy because of the size and the 60 Minutes crew?
It was, there were some days when it was quiet, perhaps January, when there's not a lot of TV on, there's not a lot of production going on. But there was enough sport, the rugby league and the cricket, they were like circuses going around the country. You'd have to manage them.
Right.
But yeah, mostly pretty full on days. Yeah, a lot of research. Yeah.
So when you say rugby league and cricket, you're taking the whole team from A to B?
Sorry, we were taking the Channel 9 production team.
So the commentary crew.
Everything from cameramen, sound guys, producers, researchers, all that sort of stuff. So there probably would have been 30 people moving around every weekend for, 26 weeks of the year.
So it's pretty hectic.
It's pretty hectic, yeah. And there's cricket games finishing earlier because it only goes for 3 days or 4 days, and then you've got to move all those people. So.
All right. Yeah. So you had a hot phone that was wired into the bigger carriers, I dare say.
Simon, this was before e-tickets. So if we wanted to pay for tickets, we had to print them out of the ticket printer up at Willoughby.
Right.
And go around and deliver them to whoever was travelling. So this is a bit difficult when the person's in Adelaide. So we had a way of issuing a ticket, sending it to Qantas or Ansett, I think, in those days.
Right.
Yeah. But that was all done manually. So I was on 24/7 for years at Channel 9, but I loved it as a job. That was one of the pinnacles of travel in Australia, I think, at that time. Yeah.
And when you say you loved it, was it the travel side of it and the coordination and the brainwork that sort of drove you to that love? What was it that sort of ticked the boxes?
I think it's, let's be honest, Simon, a travel agent's pretty low in the pecking order of jobs that, I've got 3 daughters. I keep on asking me if they want to take over the travel company. And of course they're going, no way. So it can be it can be a very tough, and it can be a fairly lonely sort of existence. But when you're dealing with these type of people, and you're getting feedback that you did a great job because you got the crew in when no one else could get them in. Unfortunately, one of those highlights was the Japanese tsunami. People were trying to get out of the country. We were trying to get people in, and we were able to get people in before the other TV channels especially could get their people in. So that I got a lot of kudos and a lot of praise for that type of stuff. So that made me very proud. Felt like part of the team. Okay. Yeah.
And you're there for a fair while?
I was in that role, and I then, with Mr. and a lot of he had an amazing array of companies that he invested in, and I was able to bring those under one umbrella for Qantas, which they appreciated. I then moved into an office in the city in Park Street where their head office was, and I consolidated all of their businesses under one. So in the end, we had about 22 million of travel that I managed
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's all still under the Channel 9 guys as a outsourced consultant?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of those businesses have faded away or been sold off or whatever. But Channel 9 still continues on these days. There's not as much money in media now.
Mm.
They've chopped everything
Mm.
down and they're a different beast.
Mm.
But in those days, I got the golden years when there was no budget.
Yeah, okay.
Pretty easy.
And are you flying the family around as well in this process?
We have some very wealthy families that we look after, and that's the main part of our business now.
Right.
And we do private jets, first class, business class. So there are quite a few families that are the mainstay of our business now.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
And you started your business, it says on your website, in 2011. So we're from the time in the 90s through till 2011, are you literally working for the family and Channel 9, or is it somewhere in between?
Yes, a lot of that. I started my own business called Media Travel because that was my expertise. And I was able to build that company up into a great little niche business. But again, with everything cyclical over 30 years, whichever industry you're in, you can see things are in a cycle. And I could see media was not the cash cow that maybe it once was, that budgets were being carefully cut. The ownership of media businesses was changing. And in around 2010, I realized it was time to change.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where Solve Travel Management came from.
Okay. What happens to Media Travel? Are you just morph it into Solve, or is it something you had a crack at?
I was 50-50 with a business partner.
Right.
I was moving on. He wanted to stay. Unfortunately, it was a messy sort of divorce.
Right.
And you learn a lot over those times. And all you can do is your best. So, I did my best, got out of there and started Solve. Yeah.
Okay. And Solve's been going since 2011 and
Yes.
it's your business?
It's my business,
Yeah,
yes.
great.
We've got 8 staff. At one point, we had 10 staff. I'm proud to say that after COVID, 8 of those staff, the core ones, have come back. One employee has been with me since the Channel 9 days, so 23 years.
Oh my God.
And the youngest, the newest there is, I think, been there about 8 years with me. So the average is 15 years or something.
Wow.
So I must be paying them a bit too much money or being too nice to them. Or, yeah.
And tell me, Solve, you mentioned that you deal with private jets and the first class type passengers. That's your niche, Solve's niche?
Definitely our niche. So the strategy is to not get too big, because once you get too big, you can't hold everyone's hand, and a lot of these people need their hands held. So typically we'd have CEOs of companies, chairmen of companies, wealthy families, businesses that are in a niche that do interesting work. So we're lucky that we try and partner with either clients or small companies that we can add value to what they do. Yeah. So some have very specific travel. Some are selling medical devices in Asia and with doctors and changing things daily. And so we can add value there. Yeah. With first and business class, we can usually do a lot better deal than what the client can do on the Qantas website, for example.
Yeah.
So, yeah, lost it.
Yeah, you're right. And this travel, you mentioned earlier, you're sort of you're fulfilling a need and being creative about it with this type of clientele, that need and that creativity is still required, because you've got to go to weird places, or you got to get them there at odd times. Is that fair?
That's fair. And I've been around long enough that I just don't want to do Bali packages.
Fair enough.
And for anyone listening, your clients listening, or your friends or whatever, the role of a travel advisor, the role of a travel management company has obviously changed so much. I feel like we're about 5 years behind the financial advice industry, where the airlines are weaning us off commissions, which is fair enough. So to use an agent these days, maybe you're seeing that you're calling them up and they're saying, yes, I'll do that for you, but there's a $400 fee for me to research this and get it started. So I think clients are getting used to that. If you're doing a simple Sydney to Melbourne or Sydney Perth, or even a domestic around Australia, there's really no need for you to use a travel advisor.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
it's a point-to-point click. It's a commoditized trip. And what's the point of paying an agent $40 or something to do that for you? There's really no point.
Mm.
Similarly, if you're taking a family to LA or New York or London or whatever, you can just as easily do that online.
Mm. Mm.
I would tend to say to try and use the airline websites rather than intermediaries, because as we've learned over the last few years, if you want a refund, you have to go through an intermediary. Sometimes they hold the money up and all that sort of stuff. So again, simple trips, I just think it's best just to use the airlines direct.
Yeah. And then if you're looking for the advisor and the experience, then obviously we expand our horizons and we're paying a little bit for it along the way.
Yeah.
Which is obviously taking a lot of time and effort if you don't do it regularly. It's like buying a house.
Yes, that's right.
You bring in the experts.
The pain points at the moment are the airports.
Yeah.
So if you've got someone who knows, maybe a trick here and there, if that saves you half an hour and a world of pain, if that's worth money to you, then you should be using an advisor.
Yeah, gotcha.
Mm.
Now, we over this journey, we quite uniquely started a little collection along the way.
We did.
Which is sort of part of the interest of this discussion today. And the elephant in the room for those who are listening is air sickness bags. And Danny has found himself in a unique position where he's actually become a collector. Talk us through a little bit of this and how this started, Danny. It's quite vague.
Well, Simon, back in my backpacking days around South America, the cheapest ticket I could get from Rio de Janeiro to Miami to meet my girlfriend was Paraguayan Airlines. This is 1987, 88, and there's no TVs on the plane. Once you've read the magazine, there's nothing else to do. And on Paraguayan Airlines, I wanted a memento. So in those days, you'd go through the leaflets in front of you, and I saw a Paraguayan Airlines air sickness bag. I said, I'll take that. That's a good memento. I'll probably never fly this airline again. And, I'll save it for my kids. So that was the start of it in around 1988. And after that, I started to put my hand into the, what's it called, the thing in front of you where all the magazines are and everything. And I'd start rummaging around for air sickness bags. And today I have about over 350.
Oh, whoa. So we're talking spew bags in the back of the seat, right?
Well, I'd like to give them
a little bit more credit.
Yes.
Fair enough.
No, spew bag is good. You can call them anything you want.
So my knowledge, and forgive it because it's obviously not quite extensive, is the spew bag is a white piece of sort of, I don't know if it's candle or it's wax line bag that you can pull out the seat and if you need to have a vomit. Are they unique? What the hell is with these spew bags?
Well, each airline was unique. These days, it's pretty hard to get one that's not plain, or a lot of airlines are cutting costs and not even doing it anymore. But in the last 30 years, every airline had a spew bag, and it was part of their marketing. You might remember the Qantas fail of the spew bag would double as putting your film in for processing.
Right.
Do you remember that?
No.
Oh, yeah. So they just didn't want to waste the money on a spew bag with Qantas on it. They actually had a deal with a film processing company, so you could do that. But each airline would have its logo and have something on there like, for vomiting, please fold here, and as if you've got time to do that if you're going to spew. But anyway, they're all unique. Some in beautiful colours. I've got these beautiful. The best one I've got is an Indian Airlines. Indian Airlines doesn't exist anymore, but they put a lot of effort. Someone in the marketing department had this flowery, beautiful green and black and gold vomit bag, and I've got it framed by itself.
Okay.
It's amazing.
So the airlines back in the day, and obviously where there was a bit more money in the travel side and before they started cutting costs, would actually market the spew bag and tailor it to their business.
Yes. So you'd have Egypt Air is a good example where they had the same design, but they had a green one, a brown one, I think a yellow one and a black one. So just depended on what they were printing that week. Some airlines went even further. There's Virgin Atlantic set of vomit bags. They actually just did a set. They printed a set, and that was to do with one of the first Star Wars movies,
Okay.
and you could collect them.
So they're Star Wars collector spew bags.
British Airways then teamed up with the royal family and my brother collected the royal wedding of Princess Diana and Prince Charles. I think that was in the 90s. Would that be right?
It sounds pretty right.
Late 80s?
I'll run with you.
And so I think there's 3 or 4 of those of the royal wedding that I've got together.
So actually the pictures of the royal family
Yes.
on the bag?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Magnificent.
It's the last thing you're thinking of when you're wanting to be sick, I assume.
Well, maybe the first one.
Okay. So we've got 350 in your collection of bags, and you mentioned that a lot of them are framed.
Yes.
Talk me through, are these unique? What are the rules around this Dannys collection, if you like?
If you have a few minutes, please feel free to go online and put in air sickness bag collections into Google, and you will come up with volumes and volumes and volumes of people who collect.
So there's other people like you out there.
Well, yeah. Scandinavians are pretty weird. They're the big ones. They have this swapping thing. They swap and they pay each other and they do all this sort of stuff. And there's guys who are obviously, they've got thousands of particular different spew bags. But I think that I have a few rules which makes a little bit more difficult. The bags have to be collected by myself or by someone I know. They each have to be different, so you can't just collect the same one. And they must have a logo or something defining that airline on it.
Okay.
So that's why I'm probably 350 is probably the max I'm going to get to, because these days there's not many airlines that are putting the money into putting their logo onto the vomit bag. And then there's a lot of airlines who are going by the wayside, or, So maybe the best I could do is if Russia ever opens up, there's quite a few Russian carriers who maybe have some vomit bags these days, but getting harder.
So you say 350 bags in your collection. That's a fair bit of travelling, Gabby.
Yep.
And you mentioned also that a friend can give you a bag.
Yeah. Yep.
How does that sort of develop and people get to know that Dannys now the collector?
People get quite excited about it, and some people who you would expect wouldn't get excited about it, like TV producers or quite famous Australian television personalities in the heyday when I was at Channel 9, loved the whole idea, and they would get so excited they'd actually come and deliver them to me in my office and ask me whether I had that one or not. And they were some of the best people to get ones from Air Madagascar, from Greenland Air. I've only sent 2 people to Greenland in my life, and Greenland Air is one of my private special ones. Some of those stands, like Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, some of their vomit bags are absolutely beautiful.
Is it fair to say that because of the people you're dealing with at Channel 9, you were going to unique parts of the world,
yes,
which allowed that
definitely
collection to prosper?
Yeah, that definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's nice because everything in that collection has a personal story.
Okay.
Someone getting excited about putting their hand into the front there with all the magazines and wishing and hoping that they come out with a vomit bag for me that's unique, possibly beautiful, has a beautiful design on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe that's taking me back to my art school days.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just not doing the art. You're doing the collecting and you've framed a lot of them. Is that fair?
There's quite a few framed. I custom frame them, so they're quite expensive to do. My goal would be to have a house big enough one day that I could cover the walls, and my wife's very excited about that.
I bet she is. Especially after your earlier story where you wouldn't part with a bag for her impending need.
Yes.
Now, Danny, it sounds like you've just been about everywhere in the world. And in terms of that mental geography, would you say you've covered virtually every corner and know it pretty well?
Simon, funnily enough, Europe, I haven't done much of Europe at all. When other people at my age in the 19, 20 years of age went to Europe to do their 1 year away, I went to South America. I know Africa very well, South America, Asia, Middle East. But Europe's one of those ones that I never really traveled much in. So It's funny now, if someone with a fair bit of money comes along and says, I want to go to this resort in Germany or Switzerland, I don't actually know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay, but the Asian and the South American countries, you just know like the back of your hand.
I love them, and I love keeping up to date with what's going on. I love hotels, so I keep reading and researching and knowing the best places to go, whether they be the 5-star joints or the interesting little 4-star boutiques or the 3-star family-friendly ones, which are great for everybody. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a busy job, that part, I dare say.
It is,
because
things are changing, and things, what's happening in Morocco at the moment, for example, there's changes all the time with earthquakes and tsunamis. And that's when, that's probably when a travel advisor can really come in handy, when there's a natural disaster overseas. And I've seen that, unfortunately, with the Bali bombings, with the Asian tsunami. When you need to get out of a country quickly, then hopefully you're not having to deal with 4 hours on the phone to an airline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned with the tsunami, you were quite involved. With the same with Bali, you got
the Bali bombing was just absolutely awful. But I was assisting Channel 9 with that and getting reporters for the Today Show, News, 60 Minutes, A Current Affair, and others into Bali, and that was difficult because they'd stopped all the aircraft pretty much, and there was hundreds of thousands of people trying to get out of the country. We were trying to get people in, so we managed to get there, dealing with airlines and people we knew, and they're difficult because you got a lot of death and you got a lot of suffering, but you do feel like you're doing a good job if you can, get people in there who need to get in there.
You're almost backloading, aren't you, with those people coming in so they can take a full plane out?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you finding the governments were very involved at that, given that it was sort of a...
Yes, the government works on a different sort of plane, that's a stupid word, but a different set of circumstances than what I was working on. I was working commercial field, whereas the government will deal with their departments and they'll handle that internally.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you weren't sort of trying to get a plane on behalf of the government and running people out. It was more about private, getting people in. And
that's right.
If you could help, you'd get them out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You're looking at options via Darwin. You're looking at options via Jakarta. You're then hearing from somebody that there is Garuda or Qantas is going to do an aircraft. It's going up empty because no one wants to go into Bali. And so you're able to get that information and then book seats onto that plane going up there, which the airlines were happy about because otherwise it was going up empty.
Okay. Yeah. So you're actually spending a lot of time on the phone and chasing leads or chasing red herrings, if you like, trying to find something.
There's a lot of research involved.
Okay.
Even these days when you think I just showed my staff PT. So you can put into your system, we had the situation a few months ago where one of our clients wanted to go to Sardinia. None of us had been to Sardinia. We didn't know much about it. And if you put into ChatGPT, give me the best resorts, the best beaches for a family of 5 in July for 7 days in Sardinia with activities, all this information just comes up automatically.
Oh my golly God. So are you challenged now by this AI and technologies?
We can use it to our advantage, like many industries. I'm sure plenty of those people listening are in the same position as us. Is it a threat or is it an assistance? It comes back to, you've got to think where this information is coming from. It's been scraped from hundreds of thousands of different sources. Who wrote those? How is that being interpreted? Do you trust it? Is it coming from a TripAdvisor,
with knowledge and skills versus just putting some random thing on the internet?
This is it. And that's where that information is coming from. So I think if we use, and if our clients use ChatGPT as a basic source and say, look, this is what it's come up with. Can you verify this is the best way to go? Or can you come up with something different? Then I think that's not a bad thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think this is the next revolution. And it's a bit like any revolution, we'll just adapt and we'll do different things because technology will take over a certain part and we don't need to do it anymore.
Well, for 30 years, I've been told that travel agents will be a bygone era, and we just had our biggest year ever last year. We are busier than ever. And for the first time in 30 years, I'm lucky enough to be able to pick which clients I'd like to deal with that I think I can add value and assist them.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah. And do you think that demand, other than obviously the obvious, which is COVID and being locked down, do you think that demand is a symptom of people having less time and really needing someone and just paying for the outsourcing option?
I think that's a good point. I think that probably in your line of work and many people listening, they may find that the rise of the family office is happening, where usually wealthy clients would get together if they've got a private company that's based around the family, or small companies that have got a lot of cash. They've got their accounting team, they've got their lawyers, which may work for them or may be outsourced. They have their cleaners. And a lot of these offices are now having their own travel management company.
Yeah, which is your perfect niche.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it's about trust. It's about working with them. It's about people understanding we've got to feed our families too, so we need to charge fees. And I do find that clients these days are much more attuned to realise that, and they see value. If they don't see value, then we're gone, and that's okay. That's good.
Yeah.
No problem at all.
Yeah, well, they'll go back to use the flight centres and the pre-arranged stuff.
Yes. Flight centres an interesting one. They've had to completely re-engineer what they do. They're doing a good job as far as I know, but they're a massive company now. Yeah. They're turning over $20 billion, you know. So you've got to not so much compete with them. You just have to differentiate yourself from other types of travel companies.
Yeah, in this case, you've pointed yourself into the front of the airplane and targeting those people.
Well, the next name of a travel company I set up would be called Turn Left Travel.
Well, the irony in all that is probably the least safe place on the plane to be seated anyway, right? Mind you, if it's going to go down, you're not going to have much left.
Well, you'll probably go quicker.
Yeah, so, true. Well, Danny, this has been fascinating. And look, we started this talk probably thinking that we'd be talking more about the air sickness bags, but overall the whole worldly experience and your journey has been quite fascinating.
Oh, thanks.
And in terms of if everyone wanted to see any of your collection or bits of that, is that the internet the best place to find it? Or
there's a few funny interviews online. It's pretty sad when you have to tell your daughters that if they Google their father, that it comes up with an air sickness bag collector. I think you probably have to wait for the next physical exhibition, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And when's that likely to be, Daddy?
Well, you've got me thinking now, Simon. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, look, the worst case is if if your collection does maintain, you've got something to hand to your kids as a bit of a dowry and say, get over to Scandinavia and start trading.
They're excited about that. They are very excited about that.
Probably need special permission to take them into certain countries. Anyway, Danny, I really appreciate your time and your candidness, and good luck with the Turn Left business. I love it, and look forward to sort of catching up again on your journey.
Thanks very much, Simon. We enjoyed talking.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to NavTalk. If you'd like to catch up on other episodes from this series or previous, head to our NavWealth website. Until next time.